Mr. Robert Glenn, Bobby, a good friend of mine, man. We're right in the middle of August, brother. It's been a long time, man, since we've spoken, man. How have you been, bro?
I've been all right. Kind of been bouncing around from prison to prison. They were shutting down that yard because of COVID, lack of staff, so they sent me up here to Mule Creek. I'm hoping I'll be able to get back down there one of these days, you know.
Yeah, hopefully so, man. Man, we've been missing your stories, man. I've always, man, you've been one of the pioneers of the show, bro. A lot of people don't know that you were actually one of the very first individuals who I've interviewed, man. And we're going to go ahead and let you take over, man. Take over the floor, man, and do what you do best, man, and share one of your great stories, man.
All right. Yeah, real quick before I get started, I just want to, if there's anybody out there that knows anybody or has any experience in publishing a book, man, contact Tony and let him know, because I got a really good book based on all my past experience.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
The whole prison gang thing, and also it has a positive touch to it to kind of help them youngsters not fall into the same mistakes that I did, But I was talking to you about, that whole Pelican Bay thing, and I was 20 years old when I first transferred up to Pelican Bay State Prison. I was just a youngster that never really been around any of the real OGs that started it all. I had heard all the stories of Old Folsom and San Quentin. These prisons were the birthplace of the Aryan Brotherhood and the other prison gangs. So it was a huge culture shock. Like, I was a goldfish in a tank with sharks. Like, these guys were murderers, and I was just a fighter. Up until that point, that's all I was doing was fighting. I was in prison for a 3-year prison sentence for GTA, Grand Theft Auto. I wasn't trying to stab anybody, seeing that I was going home in another couple of years. The first cellmate I had up there in Pelican Bay, the guards put me in with J-Cat. He was crazy, and we got into a fight. I didn't realize it then, but that was all orchestrated by the guards. That's what they did. If there was someone that they wanted to get hit, they'd put someone in their cell and just sit back and wait. I've seen this done so many times since then that it's just obvious that's what they did, That's when they moved me in with that child molester in 2005, and I killed him in Pleasant Valley. That's Pleasant Valley. They had their own, the guards had their own gang back then called the Green Ball, and they acted just like a gang, even going so far as to threaten other guards into silence. The next cellie I got was an Aryan Brotherhood associate. He was an okay cellie. He really wasn't that deep into the gang. He had told me about a homeboy of mine by the name of Rufo. I had heard stories of him because we were both from Baldwin Park. So we had sent word to him that he had a homeboy that just arrived over in C3, and that was it. About 6 months later, a new white boy was moving in next door to us, and it was him, Art Rufo. It was fate, Inmates have no control over cell moves in SHU. You might be able to swing a courtesy cell move to get away from the shower, but not moving from one block to another. Pelican Bay SHU is ran by the gang squad, and they are as smart as the convicts, if not smarter. They know that inmates will manipulate the regular guards into allowing them to move closer to an inmate that they are trying to kill. Rufo was celled up with a guy named Cornfed. Cornfed is the one some of your listeners might have heard about him a while back. He was the one that was involved in that whole dog trial in San Francisco where that dog attacked and killed that lady. He had owned the dog. So he's in WITSEC right now, Witness Protection Program, but that's a whole other story. So Rufo was cellar with Cornfed, and they got caught cutting their vent. They were The cells in Pelican Bay are all concrete, except the door, the sink, and the air vents. So the vents are the best thing to cut in order to make a weapon. I didn't know it at the time, but there was a faction within the Aryan Brotherhood that was trying to kill Rufo. They initially had approached Cornfed to kill him, but he declined. Normally you weren't allowed to refuse something like that, but because Rufo was the one that had made Cornfed, like he was allowed to go ahead and refuse. It was unrealistic to ask him to kill Rufo. Once Rufo was my neighbor right next door, like he was in my ear 24/7 about the Aryan Brotherhood this, the Aryan Brotherhood that. He was recruiting me, and he did. He asked if I wanted to be in, and I said yes. Biggest mistake of my life. Paroled from Pelican Bay in around February of 1995, and I was only out for about a month. When I came back, they sent me to LA County Jail, where I had killed the first inmate I ever killed was No Brains in LA County Jail game module. That was kind of like the first crack in my internal armor that I had built up for myself. I was a young kid, 23 years old, and I thought that I was invincible. Once I seen how easy it was to kill a man, it does something to you mentally. Before that murder, I never seen anybody killed before. In the next 10 to 15 years, I'd see and hear about at least 20 murders. Most of them all up in Pelican Bay in the whole 90s, So the next murderer I would hear about would be my homeboy Rufo. In January of 96, I was transferred back up to Pelican Bay, and the gang squad pulled me out and informed me that Rufo had been murdered, and they wanted to make sure that I was okay. I told them that I was fine and to send me back. What they knew that I did not know was that it was common practice to kill the whole crew that was connected to Rufo. The reason for this is so there will be no internal struggle or conflict between the other gang members, because people that were loyal to Rufo would seek revenge. They'd be trying to kill anybody that was responsible for having him whacked. So I stayed up with the guy, at that time when they pulled me out, I didn't have a cellie. I had just got up there. So the very first cellie that I did move in with was an Aryan Brotherhood member by the name of Steve Oliveris from Antigua. This fool was one scary dude, man. Like, you could just look at him and see that he was a killer. This is when I realized I was in over my head. I heard...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I heard from him and from others that Rufo had moved in with a guy named Deadeye. And Deadeye was told to kill Rufo, and he did, But how to do it was the dilemma. Rufo wasn't your average inmate. He was a killer in his own right. And if Deadeye came at him with a shank, Rufo would probably take it from him and kill him. So the plan was to slip him a Mickey. Deadeye made some Pruno, and he added a couple handfuls of psych meds that the other whites were buying off the tier from the J-Cats. Once the wine was done, they started drinking. The only one drinking was Rufo. Deadeye made a show of it, sipping on his, and dumping it out in the toilet when he pretended to go. After a while, Rufo was getting real tired. The combination of the alcohol and the sleepers was a bad combination. Rufo didn't know what was coming. Deadeye seized his chance when Rufo tried to stand up and stumbled. Deadeye jumped on his back, and he wrapped his legs around his waist and his arms around his throat, and he held on for his own life. He knew that if Rufo got loose, he turned the tables on him and killed him. So Rufo was like, he tried slamming him up against the wall, like, slamming his back up against the wall to try to get him off, but it was no use. The air was slowly being expunged from his lungs, and he died. He was killed. That was the second crack in my mind. I felt that if Rufo could be killed, then so could I. The third and final crack came when my cellie went out to court down to New Folsom for a weapons case, and the guard came in and searched our cell. And when he searched the cell, I was in the shower at the time, and my cellie's property was still in the house. So when the cop came in, searched the cell, he left. And then he opened the door and let me out of the shower. As I was going back to my cell, the guard called me to the front of the pod door, and he told me, hey, when you go back in your cell, push the green string back inside your cellie's TV. And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about, And I told him that. And he said, push the green string that's tied to the knife inside your cellie's TV, push it back in there. So I said, all right. So I go back up to my cell, and sure enough, my cellie's white Trinitron TV's on the little shelf, and there's a green string from a blanket hanging out of it. So I use my fingers to pry open the side of the TV, and I pull the string, and sure enough, a weapon comes out. That's a huge no-no right there. You don't ever, if you have a piece for a weapon, you always tell your cellie that you have it, unless you're planning on using it on him, So that was kind of like the last straw right there. I was able to pick up on the signs that Rufo didn't, and I got the hell out of there. Luckily I did, because the very next cellie that Steve-O got, he killed. When he came back from court, he celled up with a inmate named Spun, and he killed Spun while he was sleeping. So, but that's crazy, that's just, could have been me, you know what I mean?